Welcome to the Simply Be Found Huddle. You've got Dean and Rob, where we talk about everything business and marketing and be able to drive you more sales. Today we have branding expert Jeremy. Jeremy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's a pleasure to have you here. So your big thing is branding. So tell me about what you do inside of the branding world and kind of what your thoughts are and what you're seeing inside of the branding space right this second.
So I have a company called Influencer Club. Okay. We work with high level, high producing entrepreneurs. A lot of our members are in the real estate ecosystem, and we help them build world class personal brands. Okay. So we've put a big focus on a personal brand, no matter what company, product, industry you're a part of. It's become extremely important to have a face and an individual representing, your mission, your message, your people, your team, your product, your service. And so we help our members go from, some of our clients have had zero social media 2-3 years ago, no followers, no audience, to going through a journey where now they've done 100 podcast interviews, they have 100,000 plus followers, and some of them are on Netflix TV shows and have done some of the biggest podcasts that are out there at this point. So yeah, I hope that gives a little bit of an overview.
That sounds
Well,
really interesting.
The real estate world's a really interesting world. So let's talk about that for a minute. Because I used to go in when Facebook first came out in 2008. I think it was, if my timeline in my head's right. I used to go in and teach real estate offices how to be able to use Facebook, how to be able to drive traffic, sell houses from it. We were at that point, we were still putting MLS onto the actual websites. And I was just talking with a branding guy the other day, and he was like, "Oh, real estate's kind of not that area." But I think real estate's taken a major swing because I would almost say you don't need the MLS anymore on your website. People aren't going to go to your website and look up properties. It's not about the property. It's going to be about the person that you're doing it with. What value are they going to bring? What kind of background do they have? And I think branding gets really big into that. And I think it's taken a total shift. And I don't think a lot of real estate agents have made that shift yet. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I think there's sort of this old school and new school. Okay. And so you have the agent who has been in the industry for 30 plus years, and they built relationships and they maintain those relationships and they dominate in that way. Okay. And then you have this new school of agents that are, learning about how social can make an impact or elevate everything that they're already doing, right? And so social is kind of like that phrase of, money just makes the person more of who they already are, right? So a great agent, somebody who has success in real estate, social is going to help them make more touches, build more brand awareness, more confidence. And to your point, I agree. I don't think people are going on the website and just looking at the property. They're looking at, who's Robert, who is Dean, and within 10 seconds they're deciding, do I like this guy or not? Okay, and that's the beginning of the relationship and the connection.
Well,
So I want to ask Jeremy. I mean, you're talking Facebook. There's more than one platform, obviously, out there for social, and you never know where you're going to reach or who you're going to reach. What recommendations do you have on platforms? You say go for all of them. I mean, it depends on how much time a business owner has to get there.
Yeah. So great question. I think that the first foundation is in our practice, and what we would guide someone is to go deep on one or two platforms. Go really, really deep. Build a brand there. Build an audience there. Create a real end result. Okay. So as an example, you'll have someone who is on every social media platform, and you ask them, have you ever gotten a new friend, client, partnership, relationship, anything, phone number? No, nothing, and that's the person that's like, where's my ROI? And they're trying to play 10 different instruments at the same time. I would help my clients focus on 1 or 2 platforms and get something special happening there. And then you can, of course, waterfall in the rest of them and sort of decide what's next. But I would choose our members, our clients, we work on their Instagram and their LinkedIn specifically. Again, not to say that Facebook can't drive tremendous traffic, not to say that TikTok or YouTube especially has become extremely powerful. There are tons of platforms, any that you choose to go deep in, invest in, build a team and a system around.
Well, we kind of take that approach, Jeremy, as well for our set of tools that we have. I don't know if you've ever looked at our tools or not, but we look at it as that tree piece. So you have the root structure at the very bottom. Then you have that's going to be your listings engine. That's where we work with over 1,000 different networks to get you listed. So that way you have that consistency across there to be able to build all your citations and everything up. And then we look at your website as being the trunk, and the trunk of the tree, that's where your SEO, your city pages are going to be, whatever you have that's going to make you unique. And then you're going to have your canopy of the tree at the top. So you're going to have your social media, which is going to have your sub branches, and you have multiple different pieces. We do have a software tool that can, post out to all your social media networks. And then we look at blogs. You have your voice search up there. You have all the different parts that make your tree kind of operate. You might have paid ads if you're doing paid ads, or whatever might be inside of that tree. That's kind of how we look at it from that aspect. Now, I would say that you should focus on a couple of networks, especially as a real estate agent, as your primary, but it wouldn't hurt you to post on all of them, especially if you're using a tool inside of there, because it's not going to hurt you. You might pick up something else if you're
sure.
Work, but focus on being able to get really good at those 2 networks first. And that's going to be your prime focus. And if you happen to get something from the other crap you're posting, great. Yeah. Let's absolutely rock it. That's kind of my approach on that for how I take it.
Nice. Yeah, I think that testing is a big part of social and branding. And I'll just put this and say there is not one right way. I know that everyone wishes that they could just get the quote unquote formula on how.
There's not a magic bullet in this world.
No. So again, each platform's different. So, blasting to all of them, is going to do better on one if you're focused on the reasoning behind that. Instagram is great to share the balance between personal, professional, hobbies, and lifestyle, just as an example. Okay. LinkedIn is not that, right? Facebook is a balance between sort of a LinkedIn and an Instagram at to some degree. YouTube is a whole nother beast, right? I think Instagram has been a really great platform, especially for the real estate world, because it forces the person, when they want to get good at it and they want to build a great brand, it forces them to start adding in the personal, the hobbies and lifestyle, along with the professional, okay, which is sometimes not very sexy. This is the house I have for sale. This is what I've sold, et cetera, on and on that goes. That's sort of the horror story. When I start with every one of my clients and I look on their profile and they've just got 100 listings on Instagram, and it's like, no one gives a shit. They really don't care about the houses you're selling. Doesn't matter if it's $5-10 million property, great. If I want to just go look up houses, I can do that. But if I want to learn about the person, that's why Instagram sort of forces them to put themselves out there, build a relationship, put themselves front and center, and then the products and the business come after.
So you talked about real estate agents. That's kind of where we went to start with. Are all professionals, do they approach the solution the same way? Or is there different groups that might be a little different? I know that there's no, like you said, there's not really a box that you color in, but is there different approaches? Let's say like a medical doctor or a chiropractor, somebody like that, if you work with those professionals. Yeah. Is that a little different approach than a realtor, let's say?
That's a good question. Actually, not really. Okay. I think that there are some foundation. There's a foundation to this, to business and relationship and recognition and trust that has been here for so many years, much longer than I can even attest to. Okay. I'm 31,
you're a young buck.
Yeah, my mentor was my grandfather, just passed away recently, 96 years old. Okay, so I love learning from
I'm sorry
somebody
for your loss.
Thank you. I love learning from somebody who's been through so much and especially success in business. And some of these things are just, they've stayed the same forever. Okay. We do business with great people. We do business for long periods of time with great people. You might have a great service, but you're just a total piece of shit. And, after, excuse me, but, after 1 year of dealing with the person, that you're done with them. You could care less how good the service is. Right. So imagine trying to buy the home of your dreams with the person who's a nightmare.
You wouldn't want to do it. I mean, if you look at real estate agents, I mean, we're going to go back in time and look at that. I mean, they've went through probably the most. So you have you have real estate agents who grew up with technology. They know technology. You have the in-betweens, and then you have still people inside of the real estate world that can remember when the MLS was a paper book and it printed 2-3 times. I mean, we cut down major amounts of trees in the real estate world for a really long time to be able to have that. And it was a secrecy piece, and you had to be a real estate agent to be able to get it. And then there was the realtor piece versus real estate agent and all the different pieces. And then they had to go through that digital transition through that piece. So you have everything from the non-tech savvy all the way up to the tech savvy. And it's a whole new world. And I think 2025 is going to bring out a whole different world for the real estate world industry because of AI. It's going to be overused. It's going to have the major amount of just, it's going to be overused, and you have a lot of poor quality, which is going to hurt a lot of brands along the way. And it's going to be really one of those things to where you're going to see an influx in there. And I think you're going to have a whole piece that's kind of in that realm. And we're seeing that across all businesses, actually. But
sure.
I mean, 2025 is going to be a very interesting year for the real estate market. For one, you have the economy part into it as well.
Well, I mean, Dean asked the question of sort of, does everybody have sort of a similar plan no matter what business they're in? And, it goes along with all of the new tools and resources, AI. I mean, it wasn't long ago that social media was the same conversation we're having in regards to AI. Whole different ball game, but and it's like how do you use it, right? How do you utilize it? And again, the principles of what is tried and true are still going to be really important, no matter if we're talking about AI or if we're talking about branding, or if we're talking about like you mentioned, a doctor. I can think of some Los Angeles doctors that we'd helped in the past grow their social media. They still had to share the personal side. They shared the trips that they'd go on. The husband and the wife would go on trips, travel. They'd share that. They'd also share the procedures and the clients and the before and after. So some of these things stay the same. If you can build some trust, build a great reputation, and then you can implement AI to handle tons of tasks at a lower level that would normally, you'd normally have to hire out for.
So that's really interesting what you just said about, you show your trips, you show your travel, that kind of thing. About 6 months ago, people were saying, don't do that. And now we're saying it's important because it's going to build that trust factor a little bit more. Do you guys remember that? Do you remember that, Rob? That people say,
I think it was about a year and a half. I think it was about a year and a half to 2 years ago. I'm not sure if it was 6 months ago. So
my compression is way different than you guys, so leave me alone. But anyway,
I'm a pick on
what was the reasoning behind that? Yeah, what was that?
They were saying you need to talk about your business. You want to talk about your business. Don't mix your social life into it because nobody cares. Well, now it's the other way around. People care about this. I mean, it's really interesting how it's flipped a little bit, because now people really want to know who you are, because I think a lot of it, like Rob touched on a little bit with the AI, people are abusing it. They're putting out so much crappy content that you have to have that personal touch now to give you that branding awareness. And I think that's where you're going with this as well.
Well, it's one of those things, Dean, I'm going to add kind of into that. People are looking for real right now. And the only way you can be real is to be able to let some of your mistakes come out and to let some of your personal come out into the mix. I mean, when we were going through the whole entire, COVID situation and all the, politics and everything, everybody wanted to get really private then. But right now we made that re-switch back into making things real, because an AI agent or an AI bot doesn't go on vacation. I mean, I guess it might be able to make up a vacation it went on in this magic.
You don't know. You don't know. You don't know what it does on the weekend, Robert, when you turn the phone off. You have no idea.
You could build more of a relationship by being actually a real person versus having that piece. And I think that's a huge area. And no, you never know what's happening inside of the AI world. I mean, I've had some AI programming that has done some really weird stuff, and all the way to where it starts talking in binary code to one another when I connected a few platforms together. So, I mean, you never know what it's doing. Maybe it is going off on vacation and writing stories that you don't know about.
Yeah. It's talking about how Robert's obsolete, And,
the ways to conquer the world. What was that? Blinky in the brain? Or Binky in the brain?
Binky in the brain, But that's why we chose this format, Jeremy, is because it's live, it's unedited. Well, it's not live, it's just unedited, and it's hopefully people recognize that we have this is the kind of people we are. This is what we do. Same way with you by doing this live with us. I mean, some people won't do live because they want it polished, and I don't think that's the real world out there right now.
Let's touch on that a bit, because when you think about the horror story personal brand, and you said that, X amount of time they were telling you not to share your personal life, and now it's flipped. I probably didn't hear that info because it's always been my, I've just like blinders for 10 years. I've watched, I was very fortunate to learn from someone who helped people like Grant Cardone, Patrick Bet-David, Damon John, Kevin O'Leary. And that's where I learned my systems and processes to help people grow to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of followers. And so, you look at some of those individuals, the names that I just mentioned, and again, you look at their brand today, look at it 10 years ago, look at a Gary Vaynerchuk, if you're familiar, look at him today, look at him 10, 20 years ago. The truth is so obvious and blatant that I think a lot of the times we just overthink. We try and edit and systemize things. We try and, formulate, and it's like, does someone want to hear about the market update 100 times on an Instagram reel? Do you truly think if you sat down with somebody today at the coffee shop and you wanted to get them as a high-paying client, you wanted to talk to them about business, is that really what you would bring to the table, a market update? Absolutely not. You would have a genuine conversation. It would go 1,000 directions. And the truth is, whether we believe it or not, the reason people invest a ton of money in certain individuals, okay, if you're familiar with a Grant Cardone, okay, he crowdfunds and raises hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands, millions and millions of dollars through social. Why do people choose to invest in this person? Well, many years ago, when we worked very closely with people around Grant, we helped his wife, Ryan Secco, the head of the real estate fund. You know what? Why myself and people around me, why we invested in Cardone Capital many years ago, is because we like the person. I could see him on social in one single day. I could see him go from in the office, suited up, running the company, to going to play golf with a colleague or a partner. I could see what he liked to do in his free time, to going home to his wife and his kids, to literally coloring and doing homework with the kids. And I could see all of that in one day. And so I said, great, he's been doing this for 30 years. So have 100 other people. But I like this guy. I trust him. I see how he is with his family, with his business, with his colleagues, with his friends, what he does in his personal life. Here's my money, right? So I think that those things are so tried and true that you look, why do people like a Mr. Wonderful, or why do people like a Damon John? Okay, they are truly this individual that allows you to come along the journey with them. Okay, they're going to use tools, resources, AI, social, all these things to elevate who they already are and what they already share.
So when you're going through and you're breaking down of how to be able to create that personal brand, what does that look like? And what's kind of your process there? What does that look like?
Yeah, so super unorthodox. It starts with, what are you doing in real life? Okay, your actual business. A lot of people need to kind of work a bit more on their business and their success in real life before they worry so much about their brand and their social. Okay, so they're like, what caption, what time do I post? And it's like, you need more clients. You need a better reputation in real life, right? You want more comments? Go do more things, go meet more people, go make more touches. So that's my first thing, is social and branding is going to be a lot easier when you have something actually happening in your life and in your business. Okay. So start there. I know that might not be what everybody wants to hear, but start with the business, because what's there going to be? What are you going to talk about? What are you going to brand and do if you haven't created anything actually? Then you step into the personal brand. And now, again, our focus is Instagram mainly. And we start with that balance. Okay. So immediately looking at the profile, checking your bio, a clear profile picture, and your first 5, 10, 15, 20 images should clearly show who you are, who you spend time with, and that balance between professional, personal, hobbies, and lifestyle. Okay. And I mean, you could literally use it as a 1/3 formula, and start a photo with the wife or the husband, a photo with the kids or friends, a photo out to eat with colleagues, a photo in the office, a video of you speaking your mind about, maybe instead of a scripted market update, you actually tell people about something real that's happening in your world, about somebody you've helped, about how you can help people. People need to know these things. And it needs to be real. It needs to be true, right? So go share some of those stories and start kind of stacking up the proof that you are who you say you are.
Do you recommend that clients have both a personal and a business Instagram account?
I'm glad I'm not the only one on this call today that's kind of like out there in brain fog.
You guys are on your first podcast. I'm on my second. I think that here's what I'll say. You should absolutely build a personal brand account that incorporates who you are, what you do, in your business, in your personal life, all of the above. The personal brand, okay, is always the Ryan Serhant, the Grant Cardone. The individual is always going to get exponentially more engagement than the company account will. Okay. So that's just first and foremost. Should you still have a company account to reference? Absolutely. Is it great to build a company account that you can incorporate other people, images and content that includes team members? Again, faces, people, not just, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays from the company. Try and actually include people, stories, real things. So both, but you shouldn't, as if you were asking this, Dean, I'm not going to make a Jeremy Bishop personal account and then a Jeremy Bishop business account and only put business content and only put personal. No, they're going to be mixed together to blend both.
Yeah, the reason why I ask this, because many of our clients are multiple entrepreneurs. They have like 5 or 6 businesses. Like Grant Cardone, what he does. His books are great, by the way. I hope he's as personal as he seems to be on his books. But I've never met him. I think Rob's met him a couple times.
I think we've been in rooms together before, on calls together.
Okay, but I've never really met him in person. But no, what I'm saying is, though, he has all these divisions within his company. We have people that have, like, they might have a electrician business, or maybe a plumber. They may be, may have like 3 or 4 of them. That's why I'm asking that question, because now you have the face of all 3 businesses, which might be a little different than where you're at in your world with the clients that you have. But I'm just kind of curious on your thought on that. That's
So
why I asked.
yeah, can you ask that question? Just give me that overview again. You have different people, different industries.
So we have people that may own like 3 businesses, 5 businesses, or whatever. They're not related in any way, shape, or form. They might be a property manager, it might be a plumber, it might be all these different things that I'm just in. May have a retail store or whatever as well, because they just do a lot of things. So one personal account doesn't necessarily work for all those different businesses. That's why I was kind of asking a little bit about the business approach, because that's a little different animal than your clients. Let's put it that way. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes, it does. And so first off, I'll say if you're building a personal brand as someone who is going to speak on behalf of all of your businesses and all of your companies, okay, no matter how crazy different they are or how perfectly aligned they are, yes, it is okay to build the Jeremy Bishop that has, a PR company, that has a coaching business, that has, I don't know, a health business. Like imagine having all of these different facets, or a Grant Cardone as a perfect example. He has all of these companies. They all center around his personal brand. And that's why they continue to anything that he really puts his name behind, will have a little bit of fuel to push things further. And so, if you have an entrepreneur that has multiple businesses, of course, they're going to build completely different marketing funnels for those businesses. But if they choose to build a name, think of the guys on Shark Tank. These guys represent 100 different wildly separate different businesses. And yet all they do is slap their name on it and people go, holy smokes, it must be great, right? So that's kind of the concept of building the ultimate world-class personal brand, is getting yourself to the point where people just want to know that you're associated and they know that it's a great plumbing business, right? Gotcha. They want to know you're associated and they know that you have a great coaching business or a great real estate company as well, right? But yes, of course, you're still going to have to build out your separate marketing platforms for each company.
I mean, I think it's one of those things to where you can use the company page a lot inside of those places, especially if you're running the multi-location. So like if you're using something like the social media suite that Simply Be Found offers, what you can do is you could post to all of them at the same time, and it might be unique where you're talking different points inside of there, but you're also not the main face. Possibly you might be part of the face of that company for those other ones, but you might not be the one that's handling the operations there. And I've always been a big believer, you never want your operations person being the face and the brand of the company, because you can't control that, and they can leave at any time, and then they can take everybody with them. It becomes this really weird kind of area. So you have to remember the company has its brand at the same time, and it's going to be the prominent one, and you might be attached. The more businesses you have, it can be more of the powerhouse of your personal brand. It might make that bigger, but you have to make sure those businesses can stand on their own without you as well. It comes into this huge push, pull, shove, and figuring out what it is, and everybody's areas can be different. When I used to coach different venture capital groups to be able to go through and do that stuff, it got into a really kind of weird area for some of them because they only have 5-10% of this company. Well, obviously, you might want to be able to tell your brand, I own this company, but you're not going to be on that company's page. There's some of that push and shove that kind of comes in there. And I think there's a lot of uniqueness that comes to every one of them.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And it's a good reminder that I get this question a lot, which is, does everyone have to build a personal brand? And the answer is no, they don't have to do it if it doesn't make any sense for them, or if they don't desire to build something around you. I mean, it's so personal. Like you said, if you have 10 different companies and you only own a little bit of them, you may or may not be, that your brand may have zero connection with any of these different things. As an example, a great employee in any given company, they could work for a tech product and build a brand around food, build a personal brand that maybe down the line they decide to do something with that. Okay, so the personal brand is truly is really supposed to be independent of anything else but what you choose for it to, allow you to kind of deploy it towards and represent. But yeah, that's a pretty interesting point. Companies, not all companies are going to have a individual, like we were talking about in the very beginning of this podcast, the old school companies and people that have success, they used to just build brand, and it took it. That was the recognition, that was the name, that was the trust. It had nothing to do with, the people behind the scenes necessarily. Now you have like the Ryan Serhant who's out there as the top agent, and that's how he attracts talent. That's how he does things. But I'm sure there are many others that disagree and don't like him. So.
Well, let's face it, some people shouldn't have a personal brand. If certain personalities and beliefs and all that, they should just probably keep that away from their business and not have a personal brand too. There's a few people that come to mind that I'm like, yeah, bro, you're going to lose some customers that way. So you have to be able to think about personal brand on that side, and if you're going to do it. Now, I think that's where, real estate, insurance agents, investors, all those guys. I mean, there's certain industries that are more prominent on having a personal brand. And then you get into industries like roofing. You'll have one that, has a personal brand, one that does not, one that brings their family in. And I'd probably say chiropractors probably bring their family in probably more than any other medical field out there. But I mean, you have to know that the personal brand is going to work for your business, and that you have the right personality that it's going to help your business and not hurt your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I mean, it all depends on what your beliefs are and who you're trying to go after, and what your goals are to be able to attract from it. Do you agree on that? And kind of do you talk about that when someone comes in and does a consultation or whatever with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, there's wanting to build something, and then there's being in alignment with why, spending the time. And so, if you remember, the first thing I said was, if you said what's the strategy, it's to build the business first.
Right.
Okay. And so have success and build the business first, and then, figure out the brand and figure out the trajectory and the journey and how it's going to play a part. So just as an example, in my world now, we only want to work with exceptional entrepreneurs at this point. Okay. People who have built a level of foundation, of validation of that they've done something in real life. And now we're going to associate that and correlate that with their success offline and online.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that's really important. And so a lot of people, get super excited, and, they're trying to like solve this whole thing, and they're solving the wrong problem. Right. Of course, by the way, there are so many ways that success can happen. I mean, you can go viral and become a sensation from branding from day one. Yes, absolutely.
You could be a one-hit wonder on it too.
Sure. Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's not what I would ever want for somebody personally. That's going to be a lot of roller coasters, and it's like getting rich on an investment that you have no idea how it happened. Right. It didn't build you a skill set. It didn't make you a better person. It didn't make you smarter. And now you're trying to like reverse engineer. How did I go viral? How did I do that? How do I do it again? And you're missing that, other people had to go through 10 years of like testing to figure out how to grow something real. So
the instant success after they put 20 years of work into it isn't necessarily an instant success, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah. Well, so
and having something to talk about is really going to help your branding inside of there. I mean, I call the whole entire piece of trying to fix things that you shouldn't be fixing is, that ADHD of business, because a lot of business owners get to that point of, I know I need to be doing something, but I'm not sure what I need to be doing. And then they start working on things that they shouldn't work on that end up hurting them more than helping them. And I think that is where a lot of business owners are at this point, because there's so much technology, so many different avenues. I mean, when you go back to that whole tree concept that we preach day in, day out, that canopy for some businesses is huge, and they're spending money on things that aren't getting them results too. And that ends up being, every business is unique because every business has a little bit of a twist to it of what that canopy should look like. There's not a one size fits all. There's not a magic bullet. There's no magic wand. If there was, it'd be great. And probably my biggest thing is, voice search kind of started doing a bunch of stuff. And I had since we talked about real estate agents, my favorite story with that is there was a real estate agent in Dallas, Texas that wanted to be the number one real estate agent, was upset that she wasn't on voice search in Dallas, Texas. And I'm like, if I can secure you that spot, I could sell that spot for a lot more than $39.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, you have to have realistic expectations when you're doing this type of thing too. And it's not an instant, boom, this is going to solve all my problems. It might create you some new problems to have to balance out and reshift and balance things to make your success even get bigger than what it is, because not everything's going to be perfect day one going out. Do you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, I think that people are, we were just talking about this earlier, people are far too selective, and they really don't deserve to be. Okay. So if you're out there and you're thinking, well, I'm not going to just do any podcast, that's probably a wrong initial way to start your journey. If you're thinking I should have more likes than I do, or I should have more comments, or I should have more followers, just the wrong way to start. Just like thinking that your business should be bigger than it is for some reason, right? It is what it is. You are where you are, and you got to work with it and move. You really have to move aggressively from the position you are currently. So as an example, solutions, here's some solutions for everyone. If you want to get your name out there, if you decide to go on a podcast, don't just do one and be selective. Go on 100 podcasts, okay? And you will build an audience from whether they have 10 listeners, 500 listeners, it'll all add up, and you'll have brand awareness on all of these different platforms. If you want to grow an audience and put content out, don't just do one thing, create a balance and hit different audiences. If you plan on going and communicating with people through social media to build connections, don't just send one message, send hundreds and hundreds of messages. You never know who's on the other end. You never know who you're going to meet. So these are sort of just, a few little tips.
And Rob and I buy into that whole thing. You don't know who's going to touch who and when that's going to happen, and when that's going to turn into something like possibly viral kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Rob and I, we've talked about that a lot.
We talk about that a ton. And you have to be able to watch the data, and you have to be able to pivot when it's going to make sense for you to be able to pivot and change directions. It might be a new technology, might be a new algorithm update. It might be whatever has caused that inside of there. But you have to look at those data points, and you have to play with it. And then when you make a change, you have to go, okay, did it help or did it hurt? Did it help or did it hurt? And you have to kind of watch and keep your thumb on what those pieces are. I mean, Simply Be Found just did a huge data dump over the weekend with the data science team, end of last week going into the weekend. And we were looking at it. So our huddle was going out, once every day, 5 days a week. During the summer, we're going to take it down to 2 huddles and mix in some other types of video content, play with it and see what it is. And I want to see if numbers go up, numbers go down. Does watch time go up, go down? But you have to be able to be willing to play inside of this digital marketing world. And if you're not willing to play and take some risks inside of there and know when to go back if it's not working, going, okay, I was right the first time, that wasn't a good option, and be able to recover. But I think digital marketing today has more wiggle room than it ever has, to where you can kind of play with stuff and see what your magic sauce is. And you can't listen to all the experts out there and tell you to do X and put this much out there and everything, because your situation is going to be different every time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, find people that you like, find examples of people. We talked a little bit about that, right? Finding some examples of some people that have already done it, right? And I don't mean done it as in gone viral. Again, that's not the end goal that I would, try and get somebody to figure out necessarily. Okay. I mean, unless
viral doesn't always pay the bills either.
No, unless that's your business trajectory.
Right.
Right.
You understand? So there are people that have become influencers and their business is going viral. Their business is, volume, views, and actually getting paid as an influencer. I want to be very clear. I help entrepreneurs create a brand that's going to help elevate their business, their message, and increase transaction and trust in what they do in real life. Okay. So again, really being clear. That's why I talk about like knowing what your business is from day one, because people come in and they say, well, I want to become an influencer. Well, what is the actual end goal that you would like to have from social, right?
Yeah.
So,
I'm picturing a real estate agent inside of that scenario, and they want to go viral because it sounds really super cool. And that would be just like a restaurant owner going, I want to go viral. Awesome. You went viral. 99% of everybody who looked at your stuff, it can't become a client unless you have some kind of course or book or whatever, because they're not in your local area. And you would have been better off getting 100 views on that video or that Instagram post or whatever. If you're closing 5 people out of it and they become clients of yours, that's worth a hell of a lot more than going viral. So you have to know what that is. Now, if you have books, courses, all that going viral, you can make a lot of money, but not every business fits that category. And yeah, it seems cool. I've seen a couple people do it and they're like, well, that didn't really get me anything. I'm like, well, nobody's going to buy from you.
Yeah. I mean, that is very, very true. That is I won't even call it a harsh reality, because I'm not sure what you were expecting, but when you get 10 million views on a video or 10 million likes on a post, that's amazing. We have had many of our members have that happen. They have one of their podcast reels go absolutely viral. In fact, one of my members had a podcast that was so attractive. Every single post was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views, some of them over 1 million. And was that great for brand awareness? Absolutely. But he was never expecting that a massive amount of views to just magically turn into something. Okay. He had an understanding that that's just part of the game, continuing to go, continuing to build. So yeah, it's really important to get clear on that. I think a lot of people spend so much time doing and not really having any clarity on. That's the first question. Do you want to become a paid speaker at the end of the day? Do you want to build a course? Again, another thing that everyone wants to do, and they have no idea the infrastructure or the fact that, and then when we get there, or a coaching business, we get to the coaching business, and then they're like, shit, I actually don't want to coach people at all. Right. And that's okay.
That's a question. How many people end up changing midway when they go, that's not the brand I want.
Right.
I didn't know I didn't want that, but I don't want this. This sucks.
Absolutely. So it's not the brand that changes. It's the brand. It's the maturity through the first 6 months. So, and it's not that you are stupid. It's that how could you possibly know what end result you want or what you could have if you are on day one of the fitness journey, right? So you're like, I would love to just be able to bench press anything, So that's where everyone starts. And then about 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months in, and they've gained weight, they've gained strength, they've gained confidence, they're posting, and now their trajectory, everything changes. Now all of a sudden they're like, wait, could I get on that big? I think I would like to try and get on this bigger podcast. I think, man, could you imagine if we ended up on the Netflix show? Could you imagine? And so that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's a part of our system is letting people know from day one, you are not going to know. You will change. I had one guy coaching program he wanted to do 6 months in. He launched that. He had success with it, actually, ironically. 40,000 in revenue the first month on a $97 coaching, all videos already pre-made, everything's done, 40K in 1 month. He goes, that was great, but that's not what I want to do. Let's keep going. Then he does then we do the podcast. He does the podcast, has an incredible podcast. It goes viral 100 times. He goes, that was awesome. That's not what I want to do. Continues on, builds the brand. builds the brand specifically around his real estate, and finds that pocket, as we say in the, as you say in the music world, like in the pocket, right? And so that's really, it just takes time. It just takes time and testing and going through it.
But you know what? It doesn't matter how old your business is. I have a business that is, I've been running it now for over 30 years. We just made a pivot like a year ago.
Yeah.
Because we said this, we need to change up what we're doing because our revenues are down or whatever, whatever's going on. But you have to be able to evaluate and say, maybe this isn't where I want to be, or maybe this isn't a good fit for us any longer. So, I think people think that just because you've been in business for a long time, you're set. You aren't. You're not locked into anything if you don't want to be. That's a great point.
Right. Yeah.
And if you're not changing, you're not being fluid, and you're not moving with what people need and what people want, you'll die in a business anyway. You can't keep going and doing the same business over and over and over again, thinking that it's going to always be that way. I mean, yeah, there's some businesses that can run that way. They do okay. But that's one of the big reasons why second and third generation don't make it, is because they try to run it like it. But then you also have ones that come in that think they know more than the last generation, and they totally tank it too. So there's an even line, and that's a balancing act of how you go through and you make those changes and what you do.
Yeah.
So are most of your clients, or I thought you called your clients members as well, because that's what we are. We're part of an organization. But are you mostly seeing first generational entrepreneurs, or are you seeing multi-generational entrepreneurs? Because that's a good point that Rob made, that the next group taking over needs to be coached on what they should possibly be doing. That's another great point.
Well, I would say that, as far as I know, I don't know the backstory to everyone.
Okay.
But a lot of our clients are, they've created success for themselves. I would say very few of them do I hear a story where they were handed the brokerage company or anything of that. If that's what you're speaking about.
Yeah. I just got curious if your approach was with multi-generational a little differently than the person that's the blue sky for the very first time and make for themselves.
Yeah, I can't speak on behalf of everybody because I don't know exactly. Some stories may be a little different than I'm aware of, but from what I recognize most consistently, it is the person who has truly put in the work over 10 plus years, probably a lot longer than that, and has really created a foundation of success for themselves, and runs the whole show and runs their entire deal. Right. And I think that's what I'm talking about, exceptional entrepreneurs, where of course, they're making investments in themselves. Of course, they're reinvesting in a brand and growth and sharing this story. A lot of these people are just extremely hard workers, and they're extremely consistent, and they went really deep in one facet of business in their life, and they became great at it. And I would say that's probably who we serve the most.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, it's kind of an interesting concept. Now, Jeremy, are you kind of that? Would you consider yourself almost the second generation or third generation, since you kind of piggyed off of your grandfather some inside of that aspect? Or you might not have the same company name, but you're kind of in that same industry, if I heard the story correctly, or am I hearing the story wrong?
My grandfather was.
I'm assuming he did branding and all that, probably an old school way back, or no? Okay.
No.
I misunderstood you on that. I apologize.
No problem. My grandfather was an accountant. That's far from. Yeah.
That's far from branding.
CPA. Yeah, CPA. He did some incredible work through his journey, and helped some massive corporations from when they were in their basement all the way up to multi-billions a year, and he was helping them, guiding them the entire way, learning the entire way, and so our relationship was for many years business guidance, and he was taking care of my taxes. Okay, so a love-hate relationship there.
I realized I was wrong. It's not the first time I've ever had to put my foot in my mouth and go, "Well, I got that wrong in my head."
No worries. but I don't know exactly what to consider myself in regards to business. It's not like I was handed a business or anything. I mean, again, he was extremely successful, truly, the leader in my world and mentor in my world, and had taught me so much. And so, I built all of my businesses myself. They had nothing to do. Half of them, he told me, they would fail and it was a stupid idea and all of that. So,
my grandfather back in the day told me no one's ever going to put a credit card online. What you're doing is absolutely stupid. No one's going to do their banking that way. Well, now you can't even do banking without it. So, I mean, you win some, you lose some in there. So what I would say you probably got so I'm like a third or fourth generation entrepreneur inside of my family. That I know of, might even go back further than that, but it's one of those things to where you got your entrepreneur spirit from that area, to where then you go out, and most entrepreneurs, when they have that spirit, they're willing to take risks, and they're willing to go, I believe in this, I'm gonna go do it, even if it's wrong and I fail and I fall on my face, which I've done a few times in my career. Of different businesses, but you learn how to pick yourself up, and you carry on, and you try not to make those mistakes, because they hurt the second time around a lot worse than they did the first time, usually.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say you probably gained from your grandfather in that point.
Yeah, I gained wisdom and guidance and insight. That it would probably cost a lot of money if he even felt like sitting down with someone and giving them and helping them whatsoever. So certainly, but he didn't hand me, the old Italian restaurant and say, keep it going. So that was kind of
fun stuff. I mean, it's one of those things to where you have to be able to know where to kind of go with that and be able to do it. So, if anybody's interested in finding you, learning about you, or any of that stuff, where are they going to find you at, Jeremy?
Well, hopefully we'll just throw like a link here that anybody can take a look at. So you can go to influencerclubmedia.com. There will also be another link, like a VIP link, that has just tons of examples of some of the different people and journeys that they've gone through. And hopefully, my hope is anybody listening decides to take a look at that they can just remember all of these people that you're going to see on this page that are, these superstars now. They've got a massive brand. Some of them are on the TV shows and the Netflix stuff. They all were not very long ago in a place still trying to figure their brand out. And so if you want to grab a time with our team and have kind of just a consult, a strategy call with one of our members, with one of our team members, you can certainly click and book a call, and hopefully we can help you put some puzzle pieces together there. And if you've got some exceptional high-level entrepreneurs listening that want to grow a massive brand, then yes, of course, we would love to speak with you. You can reach out and get connected. But yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. This was a fun conversation.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on, Jeremy.
All righty, guys.
Have a great day.
You too. Thanks so much.